Hey everyone, welcome back to Abyssin. In August of 2019, a man ventured into a little-known part of a cave in the Chakrai Mountain region. His plan sounded simple enough: collect bat droppings to use as fertilizer for his crops. What he didn't know was that he was about to face something so terrifying it would make him consider ending his own life just to stop the suffering. At 28 years old, Bora was part of a tight-knit group of skilled harvesters who braved the darkest, most dangerous parts of Chakrai Mountain. They weren't there for the thrill or to explore for fun. For them, this was survival. Bora's mission was to gather guano, bat droppings that had built up in thick, pungent layers over decades. While farmers in the US might rely on expensive industrial fertilizers that can cost hundreds of dollars per ton, Cambodian farmers like Bora depended on this natural resource, rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, at a fraction of the cost. In rural Cambodia, the math was simple. Guano wasn't just a cheaper alternative, it was essential. A single successful trip could yield enough fertilizer to sustain a small farm for months, turning modest subsistence crops into profitable harvests. The best guano, however, was hidden in the most treacherous spots, narrow passages where few dared to go and where experienced collectors like Bora had the upper hand. Standing about 5'6" and weighing around 130 pounds, he had the perfect build to squeeze through the tight, winding tunnels that cut through the mountain like an underground maze. His lean frame allowed him to slip through the cracks that bigger men couldn't pass, reaching deposits no one else could touch. Over the years, he'd earned a reputation as one of the best, able to spend entire days underground, exploring uncharted passages and finding highly valuable caches of guano. On that hot August morning in 2019, Bora prepared for what he expected to be another routine 3-day trip. He packed the essentials: a rechargeable flashlight, water canteens, dried rice, and cloth bags to haul his haul back home. The Chakrai cave system stretched for just over 2 miles, carved into limestone with sections that ranged from massive chambers to crawl spaces so low you had to wriggle on your belly. The main entrance sat roughly 800 feet above sea level and led through a series of natural corridors to narrower and narrower points. Most collectors never went beyond the first 500 feet. There was already plenty of guano there, with much less risk, but Bora's destination was far deeper, an isolated area where massive bat colonies thrived without disturbance. As he moved through familiar passages, his flashlight beam revealed the signs that he was getting close: dark stains coating the walls, and the sharp smell of ammonia growing stronger with each step. The constant flutter of thousands of bat wings echoed all around him. About 1,200 feet from the entrance, he reached a corridor that would soon become his worst nightmare. It was barely 3 feet wide and about 4 feet high, forcing him to crawl on hands and knees. Further ahead, the flashlight's beam caught movement clinging to the walls, thousands of bats packed together on the limestone. At the narrowest point of the passage, a nearly invisible danger waited, a slit in the floor barely 6 inches wide, opening into black nothingness. Formed by centuries of erosion, it could stretch down dozens of feet into the mountain. An experienced caver would have recognized it as a death trap. Bora wasn't a caver. He was focused entirely on the valuable guano nearby. As he edged past the crack, his flashlight slipped from his hand and tumbled into the darkness. Within seconds, its light vanished completely, leaving him in pitch black so dense that his eyes couldn't adjust or make out any shapes at all. Without thinking too much, he tried to retrieve it. Lying on the limestone floor, he stretched an arm into the opening, feeling around for any ledge where the flashlight might have landed. The gap was narrow enough for him to touch both sides, but deep enough to swallow the object without a trace. Pushing himself further forward, he tried to get just a few more inches of reach. That's when everything went wrong. The smooth, polished limestone, worn down by centuries of trickling water, offered no grip for his hands or feet. As he leaned in, gravity took over. His torso slid into the crack until he was wedged at chest level, his legs still sticking out behind him. The space narrowed as it went down, acting like a natural funnel that locked him in place. His first attempts to pull himself out revealed a terrifying truth. The more he moved, the more the limestone pressed against his ribs, making it impossible to climb him back up. His arms were pinned tightly against his sides, with nothing to grab onto and his own weight working against him. Escape seemed hopeless. Hours passed in total darkness. His voice echoed through the cavern as he shouted for help, knowing full well no one else ventured this far into the underground maze. The temperature inside the cave stayed steady, but the way Bora was wedged in cut off normal blood flow, and soon the cold began creeping into his arms and legs. His backpack sat on the cave floor above him, completely out of reach, which meant water was no longer an option. Dehydration quickly became an immediate threat. Still, the psychological weight of the situation might have been even worse than the physical pain. Bora faced the horrifying thought that he could die here, alone, in total darkness, stuck in a crack barely wider than his own body, with no way to break free. The first day dragged on into night, though in here the darkness was always the same, and his body started showing signs of collapse. The cramped position sent stabbing cramps through his muscles, and the constant pressure on his chest made breathing harder with each passing hour. At first, he hoped someone might find him, but as time ticked by, that hope gave way to the sinking realization that rescue was almost impossible. Hours blended into days, with Bora trapped in the exact same spot, unable to move. Day 2 was even worse. Dehydration brought splitting headaches and mental fog. His circulation problems grew more severe, his arms and legs tingling and numb, and it felt as if the limestone walls were slowly squeezing tighter around him. Maybe a trick of his mind, maybe not. His calls for help became rare and weak, saving what little strength he had while coming to terms with the closeness of death. By the third day, his mind had sunk into a deep, bleak despair. Bora seriously considered ending his own life, thinking it might be a kinder fate than waiting for the slow torture of hunger and thirst to finish him off. The crushing silence and complete lack of light began chipping away at his sanity, bringing hallucinations and a warped sense of time. In some moments, he even wished death would just come quickly, if only to end the agony. Meanwhile, about 12 miles away in his village, his family was growing anxious. 3-day trips were normal for Bora, but he always came back when he said he would. His brother, who also collected guano, remembered Bora mentioning Chakrai Mountain as his next stop. On the 4th day, he gathered a small group and set out to look for him. They started at the cave's main entrance, where fresh footprints in the mud showed that someone had been inside recently. Following the paths other collectors used, the group pushed deeper into the cave than most people would dare. About 1,000 feet in, Bora's brother froze at a sound that cut through the constant flutter of bat wings, a faint human groan. He followed the voice, crawling through a tight corridor until he reached the narrow crack. The beam of his flashlight revealed an image that would haunt him forever. Bora's head and shoulders jammed in the opening, suspended over a black void that seemed to go on forever. He was still conscious, but barely, his voice reduced to a weak whisper after 4 days without food or water. This was far beyond what a small family group could handle. His brother called the local authorities, kicking off the largest cave rescue ever recorded in Battambang province. More than 200 people swarmed to Chakrai Mountain, police, firefighters, medics, and seasoned cavers from across the region. The challenge was unlike anything they'd faced before, freeing someone stuck in a 6-inch gap more than 1,200 feet deep inside the cave system. It took 10 straight hours of coordinated work, with teams taking turns chipping away at the limestone by hand, widening the opening without causing a collapse or injuring Bora. Meanwhile, doctors rigged up a way to get him IV fluids and pain relief, and volunteers stationed themselves along the narrow corridor to relay messages between Bora and the rescuers. Finally, after 4 days and 17 hours, trapped in what nearly became his tomb, Bora was pulled free. He was rushed to Battambang Provincial Hospital, where tests showed dehydration, muscle damage from being immobilized for so long, and minor injuries to his head, chest, and knees. Incredibly, there were no major permanent physical injuries, but the psychological trauma would take months to recover from. In later interviews, Bora admitted that he'd reached a point of such extreme suffering that he would have ended his life if he'd had the means. His survival wasn't due to hope or willpower. It was simply because he had no way to make the pain stop. If you thought the story was intense, wait until you see the one popping up on your screen right now. It starts out just as simple as this one, but ends in a way that's far worse. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It helps me out a ton. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.